CUSD 201. And we have a very brief presentation, kind of an overview, and then the majority of the time is given over to questions and answers. So, I think we're ready to begin. So, we're calling it the Facilities Capital Planning and Listening Session. Our real goal here is to take what we've learned in the last couple of years about, I think, the very real need to upgrade our facilities, taking community input, considering what's best for not just our school district, but our community, and coming up with a solution, or at least a proposed solution that we want to get your feedback. If we think we've listened, we want to get feedback and know. We're very honored to have some leaders from the village here. We have Leah Cano, who's our school board president. We have, I'll have other people introduce themselves. Rob, if you could start.
Rob Roble from Leggett Architects, we're the district architect.
And we have Spencer.
Spencer Parker, Assistant Village Manager.
Jim Gunther, village manager.
So, we're gonna get to it. This is the introduction, it's very quick. The current proposal is to build a new school building at the Miller location, and we have some land acquisition information on that. We're gonna talk a little bit about inflation, because we know that our taxpayers work hard for their money. We honor that. We talk to our team and our students all the time about how fortunate we are to live in this district, and that the best way we can honor the taxpayers who support us is by working hard and putting together a great school district and being careful with taxpayer money. The proposal includes the benefits of consolidation. So the idea is, and we'll go into more detail, instead of having a Manning and a Miller campus, having one school to replace Manning and Miller, K through 5. A brief of facilities history, our elementary schools today, and then Q&A. You'll see, you could throw something at me if I go more than 10 minutes, which would leave the 45 minutes for Q&A. So, collaboration and consensus is our theme. Miller Elementary School site. So, initially, when we had realized, and you'll see this is an ongoing conversation for decades, that we need to address the facilities issues, the original idea was to build a school on the Miller site. There were concerns about eminent domain and our neighbors, and I think we're starting addressing that. We don't even want to talk about eminent domain. We want to talk about partnering with our neighbors to see if we can come up with a fair and equitable solution for all involved. And there was an original concern about traffic in that area that the village had cautioned us against. There's also some other issues that were present, like shutting down a school and where would the kids be educated. So we looked at the location on the other side of Ogden, near Ty Warner Park, and I think the feedback that we have received is there's real concern about having all the schools on that side of town. And we listened to that. So we returned to the Miller location. You know, in November of 24, there was a referendum attempt that fell short by 1 or 2 votes, depending on how you look at it. One of the major concerns that was expressed was that we didn't have an exact location. That has been addressed. In April 25, another referendum attempt. The concern was that the location was not central in some people's minds. And so that led us back to today, which is the Miller site as the option and consolidation, which would include selling the Manning property. And we are believing that that would be beneficial to the entire community, because it would allow for development of the downtown area, and that would also add something to the tax rolls, whatever development was take place there, and then we would consolidate Miller and Manning at the Miller site. This is the proposal that we're putting out there. You can see the footprint of the new location would about double in size. There are 7 of our neighbors who have homes there initially, and to this day we're still concerned about that, but we've been in direct contact with almost every homeowner, and I don't want to say that we come to resolution, but it's trending more towards people being open to this. There's one of the property owners who's skeptical. The others are still, we're processing, but the initial conversations have been much more amenable to this possibility than maybe we anticipated. Our greatest concern in the beginning was you can't build a K-5 building on that 3.15 acres. So we have to expand. Our greatest concern from the beginning was how would this impact the people who live there? They are our neighbors, fellow citizens. But as I said, I think the initial conversations have been much more positive than we had even anticipated. And we would work with them in the most productive and positive way possible. The other thing is, of all the locations we've looked at over the last few years, this is, as far as economics goes, the most reasonable. Some of the other locations were gonna cost anywhere potentially from 8 to 9 to up to $15 million. We are estimating that by trading the Manning property, we could come to a fair resolution on all 7 of these properties. So actually, maybe a slight gain depending. No final contracts have even been offered, but I think a reasonable assumption is that the value of Manning would be at least equal to and most likely to higher than these 7 properties combined. And it makes sense because there's more acreage in the downtown location, etc. There's benefits to building at the Miller site. Convenient off-street drop-off and pickup. There isn't a final configuration. We can answer questions. Our architect is here, been very diligent and involved with us. So there would be convenient off-street drop-off and pickup, which would help alleviate some traffic issues that were originally stumbling blocks to this location. We may not, and I say may, not need to displace students during construction, because it's possible we could build a new building and maintain Miller as an open functioning school. That's not a guarantee, it's just an option. It addresses the issue of a central location. There's pros and cons. The previous proposal would have all 3 of our campuses in one place. We would maintain a presence on the south side of Ogden in we would argue, a central location. And by doing so, selling the property, the Manning location, it could actually contribute to the revitalization of Westmont downtown. So it's a multiple win situation. The location itself, the possibility of not having to displace students, supporting and being in partnership with our village leaders, which is really powerful and positive, and helping the whole community through that location. This is something to consider because I know that costs are of a premium concern. There was a time in 2011 where there was considerations to build a new school. The need has been present for at least considered for a few decades, if you look at this. And the cost of building a school at that time would have been 18 to 25 million, depending on what kind of school you built. It's no surprise that over the years, costs increase, especially construction costs, especially post-COVID. So what we could have built back in these days, the costs are not going to be reduced. So if we're cost sensitive, it seems like it's only going to be better if we act now rather than wait. Because of inflation and increased material costs, and delaying the project does not save money. It's not unknown that we haven't passed referendum in the community in 50 years. Really never. And this is costing us by delay. The benefits of consolidation, because one of the considerations was to rehab Manning and Miller, but long term, we don't know that that is really cost effective. So if you have one building down from two, you save money in maintenance. There's utility cost savings. And these are substantial. The staffing, mainly through retirement and attrition. So we're not talking about just cutting services or making significant cuts to staff, but we are saying that we could manage it carefully when people retire, when they leave on their own, not replacing some positions. We actually did that this year and reduced salaries by over $500,000, maybe more, we will see. But we're conservatively estimating that the benefit of consolidation would be about $600,000 to $700,000 annually. So that's worth considering. The history of facilities, I'm not gonna read this all to you, but it's been in the works since 2009, 2011. There were some proposed referendums in the mid-teens, 3 failures there. The district did use working cash bonds to do some improvements, mainly infrastructure issues. Major infrastructure issues remain at Miller and Manning. The ongoing conversation about what to do next. There was a major HVAC overhaul at the junior high. And then of course, we continue to review renovation versus replacement, the rising costs that are associated with that, and then that leads us to today. So, any fair assessment is that there's a real need here to examine and to rehab. The best analogy quickly is, we believe it's like a car that a family owns. You can only keep repairing it for so long to the point where it might make sense to buy a new car instead of keep putting money into an older one, especially when you open up the walls of a 90-year-old building. We don't know everything that awaits us, and I will let people who are experts at this, like Joe and Rob and anybody else, speak to this issue. But there's a lot of major issues that we may return to these slides if there's questions. We have the fact sheets, all kinds of information. FAQ documents, photos, TIF information, school finance, in-depth history of facilities, referendum story, revenue percentages and expenditures, and the tax calculator can all be accessed through that QR code that's also on the handout we have. So, that leads us to Q&A. We really are wanting to hear if we agree that something has to be done with our facilities. We're proposing one site at Miller, selling Manning, consolidation, K-5 building as the remedy. And we have a whole team of people who can answer questions, and we look forward to anything that people might want to ask. Please.
Has there been real estate evaluation of the price of what Manning would be worth? As a realtor,
We had an appraisal at one time. It's a very unique property, right? So we have estimates, but it's like anything that you're gonna put up for sale, it's what somebody's willing to pay. So if you would ask for an estimate, we could give you one. Is that what you're asking for?
well, I'm asking if there's been a written appraisal from them.
There was an appraisal done in the past,
When was that?
it was a couple years, 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, we first,
Currently?
we haven't done an appraisal since then, no.
Okay.
We could redo one, I mean, that's something we would consider, but we haven't done one in the last 2 years.
I wanted to ask also, assuming that a referendum goes through,
Yes.
what will the district be putting towards this? Or will this referendum be financed by the referendum? Will the school district be adding to that price?
Our business manager, Ron O'Connor's here, I mean, maybe we could get a little, I mean, are you saying there's gonna be other contributions besides the?
No, the other referendum, the district did not have anything to put in towards it, and it was all on the taxpayers. Is this the case of this referendum?
I would say this would alleviate anything from So it would have been a tax on the taxpayer anyways. So for example, working cash orders where we can take out money without asking. It says, let's say it's $10 million, which we have the capability of doing. That would be 10 million tax to the public body. We wouldn't be taking out that money for this project, so that the tax rate is still going to be there, but it's not gonna be as a result of us not asking.
So there would not be a substantial amount input from the district, is that my understanding? Thank you.
I wanna make sure we have clarity around this, and Ron, correct me. The bulk of the estimated 70, slightly higher than that $1 million would be paid for through a referendum.
Is there maintenance, other than the new school, is there a maintenance fund for high school and junior high for future problems? I thought the last referendum that was signed was for $20 or $30 million going to both junior high and high school. How is that being addressed?
Yeah, sure.
So right now, with some of the fundings that we currently have available to us in the event of something happening with the junior high and the high school, we have that capacity to borrow if we really needed to. This is exclusively for that building, this one right here. So we do have like working cash and health, life, safety space that we could, in the event that something were to occur, with minimal cost to taxpayers, because we will have some of our working cash bonds coming off the books shortly. So we do have a capacity to take care of those buildings if need be.
I believe we are incredibly transparent, and here's what I wanna say. And I'll have Joe and Rob speak to this. There's roofing needs at the high school especially, and the junior high, we're gonna require life safety funds, that are in addition to this referendum. And I guess, I'll let Joe and Rob speak to that.
So,
Yeah, Rob, sure.
The financing of this referendum is specifically for the new elementary building. The other money that would be used at the other buildings is the two funds that Ron was just mentioning, the working cash money and the life safety money. So life safety money is money that we would have to get approval from the state on that specific project being qualified for life safety. Working cash is essentially us, we've used the example of us cashing out our credit card. So our working cash is us having the ability to get funding, but basically putting it on our district credit card. So that we're able to get the money to do the emergency projects that we have. This is how we did the junior high project. The junior high HVAC was paid for by working cash bonds.
And what about the roof on the high school?
The roof on the high school is gonna have to be life safety. So that's a project that can qualify for life safety money. We have to go through the process with the architect in the state of Illinois to get the funds to do that project. But now, like that type of funding, you can't do for certain things. Like we would not be able to fund a parking lot replacement. It doesn't qualify for life safety money, so you can't use that. But, so if this referendum takes care of the elementary schools, the funding sources we have available can continue to maintain the high school, junior high, and south.
So the roof on the high school was a problem a year ago, or 2 years ago.
The roof on the high school has been a problem since
Just wondering why it hasn't been addressed so far.
So the roof is something that we can continue to patch, repair, while we take care of other bigger priorities. So in my time here, we've had a list of the top 5 priorities. As that goes on, other things pop up into that top 5. So that constantly keeps happening with different things. The junior high HVAC is a perfect example, which ended up being a $7 million problem that we have to address. Again, that project, all the rooftop units of the junior high used R22 refrigerant, which was outlawed. The cost of that became insurmountable for us to pay, so it was a matter of, we are not gonna have air conditioning until we replace this system. And again, while that junior high project was a priority, the roof was above that. But because of the costs associated with the junior junior high air conditioning, we have to take care of that first. Where the high school roof is something that we can continually push down the road to take care of other more pressing projects.
To your point though, it's to the point where we have to address that.
Right.
One other question is, Manning, you talked about, Manning, being sold to the village or whatnot to pay for the 7 properties. Is there, in fact, to her question there about it, whether there's an appraisal on that property, on the Manning School?
There has been 2 years ago, we have not approached it since then. But even a conservative estimate on the value of that property, we believe would be in excess of the value of the other 7 homes that we're looking to acquire. Because of the central location, because of the amount of acreage, we think we'll at least have a net gain of, we don't know how much exactly.
You know, I wanted to point out what Dr. Baldwin said earlier. So when you consolidate, it's one more building to worry about compared to 2. So when you look at if a referendum were to pass, then it frees up those additional buckets to take care of the junior high and the high school with minimal taxpayer costs.
So have you decided on the Miller site, or are you still talking Ty and Miller?
Ty Warner is not on the table right now for a multitude of, for several reasons.
So it's good that you've actually made a decision, you can go into the referendum with a decision. That's important. You got people that, I mean, we're all over the place, right? So that's a good thing. I did walk in vain. I am in one of those homes you're looking at, by the way. And so, yeah, so either way, so you made a decision, we're gonna come in. I had a lot of questions coming into this about, I think just like he had, was what were your estimates around other things? You're looking for $70 million, whether it was Ty or the 7 homes, which there should be a big disparity. Should be a big difference between those. Okay, you talked about it.
Is it possible that you say you've listened to the results from the previous referendums? Have you addressed the possibility that maybe there's not a stomach to build a new school, that the taxpayers do not want to fork out the $70 million? Or are you just saying, no, we want a new school, but even though the voters have said no twice?
Well, the voters said no by 1 vote the first time, without a location. So that's pretty much, a dead heat there. So we
I
have
said no by more the second time when you did no.
Yeah, and we responded because, and this is why we're listening and responding, and I would argue, trying to build consensus. The second time, I think there were a lot of people, and this is what we've heard, that's why we have sessions, who did not like the location, all the schools being on the north side of Ogden. And you're right, one of the things that was considered was, for less money in the short run, renovating Miller and Manning. The consensus that we've heard is that in the long term, that's not as good of an option, because you're not consolidating, because the construction costs, and I would let the expert, Rob here, who does architecture and building all the time, that it could almost cost as much to renovate as build new, and you don't get the benefits of all the consolidation. And of course, we're not just taking it for granted, and we think there will be people who don't approve this option. But, so to answer the question, yes, we've considered that there will be taxpayers who may say no to this. I'm not expecting a 100% vote on it. But we are trying to come up with the most reasonable solutions to a real problem after listening for several years, and this is the conclusion. And if somebody has a better option, we are always listening.
If I can,
Of course.
we've vetted so many things. the cost to renovate the two buildings without even knowing what is behind the walls at Manning is very near this cost already. And our job is, as, school board members, is to kind of, keep an eye on the finances and have a fiscal responsibility. The best use of our funds and the town's funds is to build a new building and not continue to sink money into older buildings. So even renovating an older building, do you get, absolutely you get improvements. You don't get new building stuff. You still have two buildings to maintain. You still have, structures that bow and move or 90 years old. You still have a lot of unknowns, so you don't have the lifespan on a renovated building that you do on a new building. And then when you add in the very questionable pieces of what is behind the wall at Manning, once we start renovating, what work do we now have to complete because we need to bring up to code, because we need to do that, that number gets even closer to the full building. So when you're talking about these, I know that they're huge numbers, and as a taxpayer myself, I'm paying for it too. They're massive numbers, but if it's spend $60 million to renovate two old buildings and not get any benefit from maintenance and not get, and have a lot of questions, or $70 million to build a new building, the $70 million is the better spend of taxpayer funds, and it uses taxpayer funds more efficiently for a longer period of time.
What is the age of Miller and what might be found behind their walls?
Roughly the same unknowns as Manning. Manning has older sections of the building. Their original section was 1927. Miller is about 1954.
1955?
Yeah, about 1954.
What's the capital improvements that was done?
Not to the overall infrastructure, though.
Well, there
There was an
was
addition.
offices put in. This was, I guess, between 2010 and 20.
Yeah, there was a main office upgrade. So one of the pieces of that project was, prior to entering the building, there was no dedicated vestibule entrance. So part of that project was putting in a secure vestibule entrance, which is about all it took care of. The difference between Manning and Miller is a different type of heating system. So it's not steam, it's hot water. We don't have the kind of corrosion in that system as we do a steam system. And obviously the steam system is much older at Manning versus what is at Miller. Overall though, Miller is in much better shape than Manning, just from a couple different reasons, but Manning is also in essentially 5 different sections of additions. So it's kind of been piecemeal together throughout this entire existence. But at this point, if you go back to those pictures, the main electric infrastructure of the building could not support the renovations that we need to do to it. The domestic plumbing is obviously in a situation where it needs to be gutted and replaced. If you can see up in the top, that is an actual fuse panel that's still in use with the twist-in fuses. Again, that type of equipment cannot handle HVAC of today.
Not only that, the electrical system is not code compliant.
But it's cloth wire.
I mean, there's parts of the building, we can't, we break it, we bought it, we touch it, it has to be brought up to current code, and like all the electrical in part of that building is not.
Is it
question about? Okay, sure. But I guess the other thing I'll add, the infrastructure, there are questions, but accessibility to the disabled, neither building was designed to accommodate that. Wheelchair access, somebody with crutches, a walker, you cannot navigate those buildings without any kind of assistance, and that's a challenge in both buildings.
Decrease
additional population at Miller?
Yeah, I think your words, so in the April presentation, was, it was, we're gonna double the population of that school.
That's accurate.
So my question again is, has there been any impact study on the traffic pattern for dropping, students off and picking them up on the new site? Has there been a study?
No,
There is not.
No.
Okay.
I mean,
Is there plans to have any type of study that you might wanna consider to, enhance or, at least, have the same, people do have children on that block, and people do, the increased traffic might be a safety hazard.
I think one of the unique features of the site, but assuming that the site can be expanded to include the 7 properties, so is the drawing that's up there. We have vehicles for staff coming and going, we have vehicles from parents picking up and dropping off, and we have buses picking up and dropping off.
Yeah, I'm very much aware of that.
And-
I live a block away.
No,
I witnessed it.
But one of the nice things is because of the corner site, because of the end of the block, there's an opportunity to bring traffic from 3 different directions. So instead of everything coming from Cass, potentially, we can route cars, parents from the south and then buses can come from from the west, east, west and
So
south.
depending on the traffic.
Buses can come from Cass from the east. So there's ways that we can help mitigate that. So yes, we need to study the traffic patterns, but there are some benefits to the site to help reduce congestion.
Once traffic gets to the school, it has a good place to go, as
Right.
opposed to being on municipal streets. There will be added traffic in the overall town, all funneling towards Miller, which would have, obviously.
So would you prevent people dropping off their children going down Washington Street and
Well,
only?
no, I mean,
going down a certain street?
The advantage of this is that the school touches 3 streets. So essentially, we have 3 different routes to dedicate people to get there.
Understood, but would you restrict, given the type of traffic, they're only permitted to travel on?
I don't think we would need to, because you could.
You would not need to.
I don't think we would need to, because you don't, like at Manning currently, there's only 1 street to get to the north-south street of Manning. There's only 1 way to get to that, and then once you're there, everyone has to go north-south.
Now, I'm just talking about Miller here.
Right, no, I know, but I'll give you an example of Manning currently, where currently at Manning, traffic has to go to 1 spot. With this option at Miller, traffic could get to the building from 3 different streets. So I don't think traffic is gonna be limited by 1 direction or consolidated in any fashion. You can get there from,
Well, I understand how you get there. I've been there for.
no, I know, but you're
My
concerned,
I'm concerned about.
the entire town having to
People
drive
off
to the
at
building.
8:15.
Right.
Everyone's, if we're telling the traffic, that is a major safety concern.
If you don't mind me interjecting, so part of these plans that we really see as a highlight is there is a 4th road here for an entrance, so that there is a off-street drop-off as well as pickup, where busing as well as student repair and parking could go, which is right here.
The intent in designing is to take that into account. All of these additional cars, the additional buses, and that is another benefit of building new, is that we can take that into account as we work through the design process. And it has already been risen, that was originally a very big concern of the village for this site, was the increase. Now, you live there, so you know there's been a lot of construction over there and a lot of improvements of the streets and whatnot. So you know there's been a lot of construction, which helps on that side. But our intent is to keep that in mind in the design process and be able to take as much of that traffic onto the site in the morning and the afternoon, so that we don't have what we currently have for drop off both at Miller and at Manning.
So there'll be some published document that might indicate the results.
I can't necessarily say that there's going to be a study. I can tell you that if this passes and we move forward on designing, that it will be taken into account for the design, and if a study is called for, then we'll do a study. But I can't say for certain what's gonna happen without saying.
I would just think it's part of
Yeah.
the planning process of, building, given what you're proposing, that would be a major consideration to,
Yes. Do you have any insights, Spencer or Jim? Okay, I'm sorry, Heather, go
No,
ahead.
it's okay. I live on North Washington across from Miller, and I have kids that bus from Manning to Trouty and Washington and walk along that road because there's no sidewalks. It is the pickup that is most dangerous, and we have almost been hit by vehicles. Seeing this plan, knowing that you're getting cars off of the street makes me feel a sense of relief, and I would imagine
Off of what street?
off of Washington Street and onto the site. And I would imagine that if this unfolds, that there would be communication
So
between.
they'll come down Washington, turn right on Drumming, is that what you're saying?
You're right
Well,
here.
you can come
Maybe
down,
build another access
you
road.
can
Yeah.
either have, yeah,
That's
on
on
street.
East West.
It's a new, it would be a new
Yeah, so basically
street.
it's running off four sides.
Correct.
All
Mhm.
right, okay.
Yeah, and I would say from the village perspective, my understanding is this would go through the planning and zoning process where we do look at the impact on all the neighbors, and projects of this size usually do require a traffic study, it's usually part of it, so, you know, the experts who are looking at all the plans and all that would be the ones reviewing it and saying, yes, does this meet all the requirements for a traffic study? My guess is it probably would. I think that's typically what we do, lots of developments that we have, we do traffic studies. So it wouldn't shock me if there's a traffic study done with this. That makes logical sense, but I'm not the expert in it, so I can't say 100% certainty that, yes, this will require one. But like you said, it makes a lot of sense.
And I'll add that village-wide, there's not a school in any school district that we have, public or private, that doesn't have challenges bringing kids to and from school. Every single school we have in town has issues, maybe sort of the high school, even junior high has their own challenges, which is just about, in post-COVID, people stopped taking buses and people started driving kids, so we see way more cars today than we did prior to 2020. Out of all the plans that we have, is probably just on its face, looks like the best engineered school that we will have, probably moving forward if this plan is adopted. Just from a traffic perspective, 28 years having direct traffic, which is always challenging. This looks like there's some good upside with doubling of the student population.
So at 8:15 in the morning, we will be seeing the 3 block club line, very strong, you know, and proceeding.
I know it's hard to see in this drawing, but the plan was to connect, if I'm getting my streets right, Washington and Grant with a 2-lane street along the bottom, so it's hard to see here. So across the bottom of the drawing, beneath the footprint is to connect, and that would be dedicated to parent pickup and drop off. So that would be a 2-lane road to get as many, if it had to increase to 3 lanes, the goal is to get as many cars off of the street as possible onto the school's property where the students can safely get in and out of the cars during the day. So that would be one way, so the cars would enter from Washington, travel east, and then exit onto Grant, and whether they turn left or right, that's something we could work with the district. Then the staff parking lot would be on the east side of the building off of Grant. So teachers that are coming would not interfere with the traffic for the parents, they can come in a different direction and get into their parking lot. And then the buses would be across Trowbridge up to the north, so, and they can come from either direction, but pickup and drop off would happen at that time on the north side of the building versus all the cars would be at the south side of the building. So that's what so we've been thinking about how to better manage traffic and get, you know, and then pedestrians is another factor in all this, so we're trying to think about all of that together when we're thinking about the site plan. On the Trolley drop-off spot, you're doubling the length of it. So as it currently sits today, it's not that long. You know, so think of it in terms of right now, today as it stands, you have access on 2 sides, on the north and the west side. With doubling of the student population, you'll have it on all 4 sides. And you'll have more surface area for pickup and drop-off, just based on this drawing alone. It is not doing anything else.
So just allow people.
I mean, we can talk about the details all we want, but West Glen's generally a cheap community. We haven't passed the referendum for 50 years. The majority of the people that are living here that are voting don't have kids in school, so they're not as, anxious to get the new school and to pay the tax and to do all that. What's the doomsday scenario? If this doesn't pass for another 50 years, what happens with the schools?
The shortest answer is that we have to make cuts in services to address mounting costs in the buildings, and in doing so, reduce the quality of the education in this community, which could have a long-term impact on property values for everybody. Because if enough of the referendum does not pass, and we have to start funneling more of our funds towards O&M, the only way to do that is to cut educational services. And in doing so, eventually, there's no way around it, that the quality of education would decrease. And that's a concern. Usually, property values and the way people view a community is tied to the quality of the school system more than any other single factor. And I would put the services our kids get in this community against any school district in the state. And if we sacrifice that, and we sacrifice it significantly, not only are we harming the students of this community, the education they're receiving, but I think we're hurting the quality of the community. And that's a very real concern. We've been able to stave this off and kick the can down the road, and now it costs even more. And we are one of the few communities that has never passed a referendum to address building needs. And I wish we did not have to come to our generous taxpayers for more support, but this is what communities do. This is the way new buildings are funded in Illinois. So the doomsday scenario is you see a gradual decline in the services to pay for the renovation of the buildings or the repairs of the renovation, and we are literally throwing good money after a terrible situation. We are not exaggerating. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing. I mean, the upper right-hand side, for instance, I'm not an expert, but Joe and Rob are as examples. I mean, this is beyond antiquated.
It's an infrastructure problem, and at the end of it, it's an infrastructure problem. The renovation of it has to touch that infrastructure. The main electric is the biggest thing. Again, it's just to the point where we can't get ourselves out of this hole without a referendum.
Dan?
Yeah, Dan Charleston, and I've been in Westmont for 35 years, 36 years. And Courtney, I appreciated your question. And President Conover, I especially appreciated your really succinct and to the point summary, in my view, of why continuing down the path of not doing a referendum for a new school means that we are continuing to use up things like life and safety bonding capacity and working cash bonding capacity to continue to put lipstick on pigs. And lipstick on pigs meaning, and it's, look, Manning isn't gonna get younger by spending money. Miller isn't going to get younger spending money. Just as importantly, the slide that talked about operational efficiencies, we're never gonna save money operationally. We're still gonna need all the operations support attached to two buildings rather than one. So taking the pressure off the operating budget by having it be in one, by having that single facility is a massive add to the district. Just as importantly, and to the conversation about Manning, in terms of what the valuation is there or not, observation, it's in the TIF, it's in the downtown TIF. Nobody's buying the building to use that building, they're gonna scrape it, right? It's a land play, it's a development play. So at a certain level, we're kind of shooting in the dark about what the land value is there, simply because the land value is really gonna be dependent on what the conversation is about, what development ultimately goes there, and what that looks like. Because the more you can build, the more the land is, right? So there's a range for the land, but I think the larger point for me is this. The village of Westmont would benefit immensely from having that site available to be developed on its main business corridor as an actual business piece of real estate to add value to its tax base and to that strip of Main Street, if you will, in westbound. The village benefits immensely. In addition, you know, again, as the presentation points out, the flip in terms of whatever proceeds we can get to the houses, to the extent that there's a net gain, I'll only make this observation. Ideally, it would reduce the amount of bonds that have to be issued. Depending on the timing of how that unfolds, you may not be able to do that, but to the extent that you can't do that, whatever gain, in my view, the district should seriously consider rebating any net gain back to taxpayers as a result. But to go back to the point, I think building a new school in this site benefits not just 201 immensely, but it benefits the village immensely. And I appreciate it, again, President Conover, yourself is fantastic.
I'm sorry, I missed, how much is this referendum?
The estimate is between 70 and 75 million.
70 and 75.
Do we have a tax calculator that you can access?
Yeah, I saw
QR code?
that.
And a rough estimate is that the building, and I'll let the architect, Rob, speak to this, but a building of approximately 90,000 square feet at approximately $800 a square foot all in comes to that $72, $73 million mark.
Okay. I'm just going to express my concern is
Sure.
that Downers Grove passed a referendum recently, and their taxpayer cost was significantly less than the past two referendums that were proposed here. And then also, this is a bit further, but in LaGrange, they had a referendum that also passed 102. And that also was significantly less when you compare, you know, like a $350,000 home and what their costs were in Downers versus here versus LaGrange.
I would argue there's some economies of scale at play, but our tax rates in our district, and I'll have Ron speak to this or others, and we should publish everything. Our tax rates are pretty favorable compared to other DuPage municipalities and taxing bodies. We're currently in the lower 40% for tax rates compared to our neighbors. So overall,
Plus, they did renovate the buildings that were salvageable, coming from a Downers Grove resident here. So that was a big piece. They had younger buildings, better buildings than what we have. So their ask was less because they didn't use much.
Well, they've also passed referendums over the years, so, I mean, if we would have passed a $20 million referendum every 15 years, we wouldn't be looking at 70 million, you know, so if you add them up, we could have, you know, taken care of all this, but now, it's time to pay the bill, unfortunately. And, I mean, you see a bunch of stuff on social media about people saying, oh, well, you need to budget better, you need to manage your money better. There's two different budgets, right? There's your for this, so cutting a teacher's salary or cutting teachers does not help you to build a building. And I think people get confused on some of that. They think that if you reduce your daily expenses, you're gonna have that money that you could just now move over to a building, which is not the case, correct?
absolutely.
Correct. I mean, yeah, the Downers 99, the high school loans, $136.6 million for their referendum. So, just kind of to put it in perspective, and that was just renovations.
Right, but Jack, so that all said, yeah, you guys will have, there'll be money, I'm hoping, that this wouldn't happen again, right? Nobody in this room is responsible for where we are today, get that, nobody. But we will have a plan to keep that from happening for the next people sitting here 50 years from now, hopefully not having the same experience. So is there anything built into this, you think,
think if you just look at the buildings as a whole, if you think about this project going on after that, we have a brand new elementary school. You have the junior high, which is in very good shape with the exception of a roofing project and a parking lot project. Based on the HVAC project we just did there, that set that building up for the next 20 years. If this was to go, the elementary school is taken off your list for the same amount of time. You're really only dealing with the high school. South School doesn't have many needs. It needs a roof on the student section, but beyond that, it's a very good building. So I think if you take care of the elementary problem, what is left is manageable with the funding sources we have. Good balanced budget, you can manage what you have at that point.
Just a question too, it's not that, sorry, Jack, it's South School, but what would it cost to incorporate that into the north side and give it a South School?
That was
That part
explored.
too.
But again, when you think about what's already in place at South School, to replace that in a new building is gonna cost an unbelievable amount of money. Where we already have that program established, that building is already set up, it was renovated, almost 20 years ago now, it was renovated, where, again, to replicate what we have at South School at the new building would add too much to the cost of it.
How large is South School?
South School, right now, the bottom section is 3 full classrooms. The upper section is just the district office, there's a bigger conference room. All in, it's about 30,000 square feet, it's relatively small.
The classrooms have a different resource requirement though. All
Yes.
those classrooms need plumbing, all those classrooms within them, and that was one of the costs
That's a huge cost.
that really jumps. So it's not, those classrooms, square foot by square foot, are nowhere near the same cost as essentially just a box classroom. And that was what kind of threw it over the edge.
So the trade-off for selling that property, and is there a lot across the street too?
Yes.
Space across the street?
It's a parking lot and playground.
It would not pay for the additional cost to put those different required rooms into the new building.
Hi.
Speaking of South School, that's, my kids went there. Is there any chance, instead of buying up 7 properties, is there any chance of splitting up Miller while you're constructing in the same position, put some of the kids into South School where they used to be kindergarten through 5th grade, and then the ones that, if it's overcrowded, go to, finish Manning, and that way you can start a total tear down and rebuild, save time, save money, and you don't need 7 properties. That may save a lot, because I'm sure you're offering them a pretty penny to, to entice them to let go of that property. I've been in Westmont for 50 years. That was my kid's school. It hurt us when you closed it, but I think there's plenty of room. Last meeting I was here, and you said there's the high school has plenty of room that maybe administration can go there, maybe even that possibly put the preschool there if you want a preschool, and maybe offer a class for the kids in high school to come down and help preschool so they could get acquainted with helping little children. I mean, there's so many opportunities there. But to buy up 7 properties, that's costing a lot of money in that budget just to be able to do that. I've worked with residential construction for many years now. I've kept my house up. I'm disgusted. I don't know what you guys have done in the last several years. You should have been putting money away for a new school or fixing the schools that are there. But you haven't done it.
Well, I don't think that's accurate, I'm gonna tell you why. Because the way that schools are funded in Illinois, it would be very dangerous, and that's why there is the referendum, and that's why almost every single community in this area has passed one. We're like the last of the communities that has not passed it. If there was enough money to build a new school, I want you to consider this, please. To build a new school out of your annual budget where you could squirrel money away, there's the danger, and this is why there's the mechanism of the referendum, that you could just feed that money into teacher salaries and more positions and administrative salaries, and not have that money. So there's enough to maintain quality education, but not so much that you could purchase a new building. And so that's why the state has this mechanism that almost every other community in this region and throughout the state has taken advantage of. You have to ask your taxpayers, but almost always they respond. So I don't think that's fair to say you should have just been squirreling money away. That's not how districts and new buildings are funded in Illinois. Well, the proof's in the pudding, and here's why. Why is it that every other community, almost without exception, asks their community for a referendum and then they respond?
And what about bonds and stuff?
What do you mean?
Bonds, you know, I have a Westmont bond, I'm not quite certain what it's in, but I have a Westmont bond. The fire department, I think, is, you know, they put away money for, a tax thing to build a new fire department and stuff. They're not asking for a referendum. I still think there's something you could have done. You've been obviously asking us for money for years to build a school, and it looks like you're just sitting back waiting for enough people to come and say yes.
Respectfully, we have not held up these buildings and done
That's
anything.
how it looks.
You've done work on your house, you've kept it up to date, so you know that piece of when you keep things up to date, newer things are less expensive to operate. These projects are very large, very expensive projects. We've bonded where we've been able to and done larger projects, but our bonding capacity is about $35 million. We're maxed out at what we can do. The ability, it's all about capacity pieces. We just don't have enough. And it's always prioritization over the last number of years. Can we spend 50 million? Can we spend this much to do this? Can we spend this much to do that? And then have all these questions about it. It's not because Joe and his team have not maintained these buildings. They've done their darndest to maintain these buildings. And in the example of the junior high, you can't maintain an air conditioning system that you cannot buy the air conditioning coolant for anymore. And that coolant continued to get more expensive, more expensive, more expensive, more expensive. So now, just to maintain, we have to spend even more because everything continues to go up exponentially so. And that's happened with many of these things. So respectfully, they have done their best and have maintained. There is a point where you can't continue buying new parts because they don't make new parts anymore. That's where we're at. And we're already at, and you're spending more all along in the past to try to put Band-Aids on it to keep things going. You're spending more on those Band-Aids. It's the good money for good, it's putting good money towards appropriate use and good taxpayer funding. We've had to do those Band-Aids because we have to do those pieces, but they've cost more and more every year, which means that our budget gets tighter and tighter, and our ability to put money away gets less and less because we keep having to do Band-Aids. This is a no more Band-Aids. This is a solve.
And then, if I can, I'm Spencer with the Village. I just want to add a couple of things to a couple of comments that have been made. So first of all, to Dan's point about developing of Manning and kind of the benefit to the community as a whole, that's one piece of information that residents can take into account as they're making this decision. And so the benefit to the community as a whole is, you know, and again, as was noted, these are all just estimates, but roughly long-term perspective around $800,000 or so per year going onto the tax rolls that goes to the governmental entities. So the school, the park district, library, village, county, all those added together, roughly $800,000 per year that goes to provide services for the residents that you don't have to pay for on your taxes. So that's the benefit of the development. That's kind of the overall development, the overall benefit. It's long-term, it's not immediate, but that's that piece that Dan Charles was talking about. And then, Pat, to your point about the benefit for the village and the way we're able to do that with the fire station, I will say the village is very grateful that we have revenue streams that include things that are not just on the backs of all the residents and the property taxes. So the village is fortunate enough that we've got other taxes that hit all the visitors that come into town as well. So like our sales tax and those kind of things that we're able to let us do this for our fire station without having to go to referendum or anything like that. So we are grateful that we have that. I wish the school district had something like that. unfortunately, they don't, but that is the way we were able to do it because of that benefit that we have.
But I think one of the problems is most people, because they saw our taxes go up, they think the fire department is on their taxes now and stuff. And I think it's gonna be important for people to understand that that didn't affect the taxes, other things affect the taxes and stuff. Because, Westmont is known, we're one of the largest senior citizen areas around here. So you're asking us who are, you know, very limited funds or have to go into savings, you know, to be able to help pay. And yet your enrollment, I guess, is down. That's what I've been told by my neighbors and stuff.
They can say that, but enrollment is projected to be steady. We're not gonna see a large increase or decrease based on any projection.
May I ask, you have a tax calculator on here, how do we find out what an individual taxpayer is facing in terms of additional payments and taxes in future years to fund this? Is that how we do that through this tax
That's a fair
calculator?
question, could you please? Okay, go ahead.
There's but in terms of it, I'm so sorry, I don't know where. Yeah, so there's a tax calculator there, on the site, there's a QR code,
Okay,
and then it'll give you the information.
so this will tell me how much additional taxes I will have to pay every year to fund this referendum?
Correct.
Yeah, I did probably.
And I have to say, I understand all of the things you're saying, and I applaud you for all the work you put into this. It's a huge feat, I understand. But we are senior citizens, we are living on fixed incomes. I've lived here 50 years, I've been paying tax for 50 years, I've never had a child. And I realize that affects my property tax and all those things, but there's a limit to how much taxes I can pay. So that's why this is so important to me, more so than any of the other arguments you're building here that are all good arguments, but not to a senior citizen who is now faced with additional costs that they cannot support. So that's our.
And then that calculator, it'll also just drop down to see what exemptions you had as well, so it'll be pretty precise.
Okay.
We're gonna have to move forward to our board meeting, but I wanna thank everybody for being here. I just wanna close with this. We are both grateful, and everybody has to do what they think is in their best interest and the best interest of the community. I do appreciate that.
Before you leave, Carla, go ahead. Yeah, we just want to address one thing. There is an issue potentially with the tax calculator. Are you figuring it out?
Depending on the phone, right, it takes me to a website.
Thank you.